You've probably heard of Which Magazine, our home of hard-hitting journalism and informative stories delivered directly to our members. There's our travel, money and tech mags too. But did you know you can hear some of our best articles for free, available to listen to whenever you like? Each week on the Which Shorts podcast, we bring you a specially selected story, lovingly voiced and produced especially for you on a whole range of fascinating topics. Just search Which Shorts wherever you're listening.
Your regular reminder to get your own questions into us to answer in the next episode. Do you have a moment to talk about our Saviour? Have you heard the good news? It will change your life, give you eternal health and cook your chips a whole lot quicker. May I ask, have you accepted the air fryer into your heart? See, the way people talk about them, air fryers can seem a little bit, well, culty. But might that hype be justified? Or are they just the fondue maker for the 2020s? I'm Harry Kind.
And I'm Grace Farrell.
And this is Get Answers for living your best consumer life.
When life gives you questions, Which? Get Answers.
To help us out today, we have two great experts. Steph Kipling heads up our science team at Which. She'll give us a scientist's take on how air fryers differ to other cooking appliances and whether they're really the most efficient way to cook.
And I'll be talking to Ben Ebbrell. He's a chef and founder of Sorted Food, which is a YouTube channel and food community that specialises in making cooking accessible to everyone. And let me tell you, he's got so much incredible advice for cooking with an air fryer.
But Steph, before we jump into that, let's start with the basics. How do air fryers actually work?
So air fryers are essentially a small fan oven, much like your traditional oven in your kitchen already. So they have a heating element and a fan that blows around the hot air to cook your food by convection. In a similar way to a deep fat fryer cooks with hot oil, an air fryer cooks with hot air. Most models nowadays are basket type air fryers. So everyone's seen a picture of an air fryer. You have a handle on the front and you pull the basket out and you put the food in, push the basket back in. They're the most common type nowadays. Increasingly, dual models have become quite popular. So these now have two baskets instead of one. And these are really versatile because they can let you cook two different types of food at the same time. Some of the fancier models even let you synchronize the cooking. So even if you're using different times, different temperatures, different programs, they'll finish at the same time.
Wow, so each drawer, it's its own kind of microclimate then?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So what would you say the positives are of cooking with an air fryer versus a traditional oven or a different cooking appliance?
So they are smaller than ovens. So if you're cooking a smaller amount of food, if you live by yourself or if you're a student, air fryers can be a great present for a student going off to university. So you're only cooking and you're only using the space that you need to cook. You know, if you're cooking one portion of chips, you don't want to be heating up your entire oven just for this small amount of food.
So just to be clear then, if they use less energy, presumably they're a cheaper way to cook?
Generally, yes. Per meal, yes. So, or per food item, yes, they will be cheaper to cook.
And is there anything we should watch out for? Are there any negatives, you think, to air fryers?
So I just talked quite a lot about how they're good because they're small. That can also be a negative. You know, if you've got a family of 4 or you're cooking Christmas dinner for the family, it's probably not going to be big enough. You're going to end up cooking multiple batches and actually you'll just end up negating the cost saving because you'll be cooking food after food, whereas you could just put it all in the oven at the same time. So you may only be able to do one jacket potato at a time in an air fryer, whereas you could do several in an oven. You know, if you're cooking roast chicken, you're going to be limited to a smaller bird than you would in an oven. Some of the bigger ones, so if you are cooking for more people, you can buy bigger models. You can buy the dual basket models that we just talked about. These can be bigger, they can be bulkier. So you need to be sure that you've got space for it on your worktop, or you're going to be lifting it in and out of a cupboard every time you want to use it. And they can be quite heavy and bulky, so you need to be thinking about that as well.
So now we know what an air fryer is, I thought I should sit down with a top chef to find out how you can use one in your home to get the best possible food. Thank you for joining us, Ben.
Pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Can you just give a bit of a background to yourself and to Sorted Food?
Yeah, so Sorted Food, YouTube, I guess, is our home. It's a food and cooking exploration channel, but you'll also find us across all other social platforms. And it's a, dare I put the numbers to it, 26-year friendship. But now, you know, it's not about the four of us. It's not about the team of us we have in the studio in East London. It's about this huge global community all talking around food.
And particularly about food, making it accessible for everybody?
Yeah, we always say that. So there's a few chefs in our business. I'm one of those, and it's fair to say the chefs think in really weird ways. We're an odd breed. So actually,
I've watched The Bear. You're weird people.
So you've got chefs, and then you've got normals,
yes.
like normal home cooks. And our conversation is, how do you take what's in chefs' brains and make it more accessible for normal home cooks? So we have chefs and normals, and that's the conversation.
And a lot of the principle of the air fryer is about making things that are difficult to do, easy to do, that only some people can do if they have access to a deep fat fryer. You're making it accessible via an air fryer. You've dealt a little bit with air fryers. In the years that you've been doing sorted food, how have you seen them kind of appear and rise up through the kitchen fad world into what could be considered a mainstay of the kitchen?
Yeah, I think it's been a long journey. I think air fryers have been around an awful long time, but in the UK and in here in London, less so. It's more of a recent addition in the last few years. And if I'm honest, I think as chefs, we probably turned our noses up at them a little bit early on. And then we had to go at playing with them, because basically we always follow what our audience are interested in, and they'll comment down below, have you tried this, have you tried that? We've done all sorts of kitchen gadgets, appliances over the years, and people kept asking for air fryer content, and we said, well, okay, let's try it. And I think our minds were open to actually what it is, and when you better understand what it is as an appliance and what it can help you do, then we're like, actually, it's quite simple, quite cool, and I can absolutely see why it's taken off in the last few years.
How should people approach an air fryer? I know how to use a frying pan, in that you're heating it up with some oil to make sure stuff doesn't stick to it. And I know what foods to put in a frying pan. How should people think generally about the air fryer?
Yeah, essentially, it's a small desktop appliance. And I think that maybe that's the challenge in the UK, is all, if not certainly most homes come with an oven. So it's like, well, why do I need this other oven that's going to use up worktop space? But essentially, they're usually a bit smaller, which means they heat up a bit quicker. And then the stuff you put into them, anything you want to roast or grill. It's actually not things you necessarily want to fry. And that's the really confusing thing. If you think of deep fat frying, things like batter, tempura batter, fish and chips, and things with wet batters, you can't put those into an air fryer. What you can put in is things that have a natural amount or level of fat built into them. So oily fish and things like salmon work so well because they've naturally got the fat in them. And what the air fryer does is make that fat sizzle. Or you can add in vegetables and bread and other bits and pieces and leaner meats, but then you add a little bit of fat in the form of a marinade or an oil rub or something like that. But essentially, it's oven roasting with a convection fan that means you get a little bit more of an intense heat, usually just from one direction above.
And talking about fat then, as a key component, useful component, how does that interact with that intense heat? What's the underlying recipe there?
I guess it's just because the fan is helping hit a more intense heat quicker, so that fat is sizzling. That's what you always want to do, and it will do that on a contact surface of a frying pan. If you've got a slice of bacon, a rasher of bacon, it's the fat in the bacon that starts to sizzle, and that's what makes it go golden and crispy, and it's what we love, that smell. You can do exactly the same in an air fryer, except it's just, instead of contact heat on a metallic surface, it's coming as hot air pushed down, but it's basically making that fat sizzle and cook the product.
Now, you guys do have recipes where you've been, making them specially for air fryers. I think a lot of people don't know how to adapt all the other millions of recipes out there to an air fryer. Say you've got something that says 40 minutes in an oven. Is it something that could go in an air fryer, and are there timing changes? Do you have a general sense of how people should cook in an air fryer, especially with timings?
It's going to be quicker. I don't think there's a set rule, and everything will be slightly different. It will depend on how close you are to that fan as to how quickly things heat up. But as a good example, we have really simple midweek recipes where we just do a roasted tomato pasta. Now, the time it takes you to boil a pan and boil the pasta, set a kettle going, put it into a pan, maybe 8 minutes of boiling and drain it. In that time, you can have cherry tomatoes roasted in the air fryer. If you were to do it in a convection oven, it would probably take twice that. So your pasta dish suddenly takes 25 minutes to roast tomatoes. Here, you can literally do it in 8-10 minutes in an air fryer because of that intense heat. So in that case, it's almost halving the time of some foods, but it's not necessarily a blanket rule.
It's really interesting talking about time. We've had people on social media talking about why they love their air fryers, people saying that it just reduces the time they spend in the kitchen. There's a little bit of kind of a learning curve, as you were saying, to make sure that you actually get that amount of time right. Do you think that time, that convenience is part of why they're so popular?
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to where Sorted started, it's like 14 years ago, right? We were a student cookbook and then a student channel, and it was about recipes for students by students. We were university students at the time. And everything that a student wants is quick, simple, limited equipment, affordable, and kind of impressive and damn tasty, like all of those metrics. And then we kind of graduated and went, well, maybe we should stop using the S word, because if you say student, everybody who's not a student doesn't want to align themselves to that. And yet, as young professionals, young families, young graduates, we're now in our mid-30s, we still want quick, simple, affordable, tasty, impressive food with minimal equipment. Nothing has changed.
I did more cooking as a student, I think. I think I spent longer cooking rather than now I could do with learning to cook like a student.
And we're all busy, and we all find excuses and things to fill our time with as an excuse for why we don't cook from scratch more often. And to be honest with you, if an air fryer is going to encourage people to cook from scratch more often, I think it's the holy grail.
We were talking earlier about just the timers of an air fryer, about the kind of tech side of air fryers is completely different than ovens, which are quite off-putting.
It feels more intuitive. So there's a crazy study, and forgive me, I haven't got it to hand, but the number of UK households who don't know how to change the time or set the time on their oven means that for 6 months of the year, it's probably an hour wrong. Yeah. When the clocks go forward or back, it's like, I can't change the clock on the oven. So that just remains wrong for the next 6 months until it corrects itself again. With an air fryer, it is much more intuitive. It's there. It's going to beep at you. It's going to heat up a lot quicker and tell you when it's ready, rather than have to wait to see if the little light goes out. It beeps at you and tells you, I'm ready. You can put stuff in me now. Everything about it just feels a bit more intuitive because on the whole, certainly in the UK market, they've all been designed and improved and adapted in the last few years to sort of meet current trends.
I wonder if there's something in the fact that they're not made by people who make ovens like, Neff and Smeg. They're Ninja and Philips and a lot of the small appliance makers who actually do, I guess, have to adapt, have to make a product very easy to use and can't just go, oh yeah, it's an oven, like learn how to use it. Even my oven, I always have the time right. I will say that it's always a joy when the clocks change because I can go around and change the clocks, make sure it's accurate. But I do not trust the functions of the oven, which are like, oh, it will start cooking at this time and stop at another one. Even though I know roughly how it works, there's something about that I don't trust. Whereas an air fryer, it's very much kind of on the surface.
Yeah, exactly that. It feels like a little bit of tech. And I think because it sits on the worktop, yes, in small kitchens and especially small flats in and around sort of cities, that's expensive real estate to have another oven when you've already got one built in. But I think people are seeing the value of it. And I don't just think that's necessarily what we would consider our core sorted food audience to be, which has always been kind of a few years younger and a few years older than us. Even my parents' generation, who now, retired, just the pair of them. And the logic is, well, I don't want to heat up the entire oven because it takes 20 minutes to preheat. If I can just heat up this little box, that's perfect for the two of us. And we can get 2 portions of food done before the main oven's even heated up. And so I think it's kind of appealing not just to small flats and studio kitchens, but also to people with bigger kitchens and bigger ovens because it still is doing the same job.
Okay, so air fryers sound fantastic. What really can't they do? You've mentioned wet batter. Are there things that are just no-go you'd say this is something that's worth heating up the oven for?
Yeah, I think you've got to avoid all batter. So in that sense, you think anything that's been dipped and battered, or even you cook the batter. So Yorkshire puddings and pancakes and things like that start from something very wet. However, fritters, falafel. We've even done sort of bhajis and pakora where they're kind of sticky tacky batters. Like they're going to hold their form and you can get them in an air fryer drawer and put them in. They come up lovely and crispy, especially if they've got a little bit of fat in the batter. Breadcrumb things are awesome. So anything that's been paneed, again, you might need to give them a little spray or spritz of oil. Otherwise, it's more of a toasting than a frying. But the other thing is there's so many products out there that are already partially cooked for you. Oven chips, they've already got that layer of fat on them. They've been partially cooked and they crisp up an absolute treat in the air fryer.
Chips always seem to be like the top of the conversation with air fryers and those kind of par-fried things that you can get in a box in Iceland. I love those things. I'm also aware that a lot of the time I don't eat them because it would mean turning on the oven. It might be very good for me. Do you ever think an air fryer encourages people to eat less healthy things than, say, a slow cooker does?
Maybe, but I would say probably the counter to that, I think, is a lot of people suddenly roasting veggies really quickly and meaning they're keeping their freshness, moves it more into that almost stir-fry route where, yeah, you've got a little bit of oil in the pan, but it's mostly veg that's been cooked quickly without losing all their nutrients. So actually, I think yes, there's lots of products you can get from the freezer aisle in the supermarket that are processed and possibly even ultra-processed foods that are now quicker and easier to do in an air fryer. But I think the counter to that is lots of fresh veg, making your own sweet potato wedges or chips and just tossing them in a bowl of seasoned oil before they go in the air fryer, or even just straight in the drawer of the air fryer and give them a toss around. You don't have to dirty another bowl. But I think it makes it quicker and easier for the healthy stuff as well as perhaps the stuff that's processed.
Well, I'm going to spring this upon you because I've not told you about this.
Oh.
But I've got 3 incredibly boring ingredients. Can you give basically your 30-second recommendation, as you said before, of how you would cook some of these in an air fryer? So I've got here just a head of broccoli. If you had this, an air fryer, and a lovely kitchen of ingredients, what would you do?
Okay, so I've got a head of broccoli. I would instantly take off all the florets so they cook a little bit quicker, and then toss them in a bit of oil, salt and pepper, keep it super, super simple. Maybe some spices, but I think actually keep it clean and just roast it off. And in the few minutes that they're in the drawer, you've got time to step aside and make an amazing dressing, something with tahini, some lemon, some oil, and make this incredible dressing that you can just drizzle over. And all of a sudden, you've got little sort of warm crudité for a party and a gathering that's, I would say, better than a tube of Pringles.
I am so glad I didn't warn you about this because I love watching you actually do this. Yeah, well, it's so good. So I've got here now 2 chicken breasts from Lidl. I think those are a real classic air fryer thing. What would you do to make them kind of more interesting?
So they will grill up quite nicely, but you run the risk slightly, perhaps, of overcooking the top. You might get some good colour on it, but drying it out before the bottom has cooked through in an air fryer. So for us, I think I would cut it up into bite-sized pieces, toss it in a couple of tablespoons of yogurt. Again, you can season and spice that if you like, and some breadcrumbs. So you're basically making homemade nuggets. Put those into the air fryer with a spritz of oil and give those 10 minutes or so. Check the biggest one so it's cooked all the way through, but don't sort of overcook them. You should get a little bit of colour, take them out, and while they're still hot in the drawer, a squeeze of honey and a squeeze of sriracha and toss it in the drawer, and you've got kind of this hot, spicy, honeyed nugget thing that you can then add to a delicious salad full of little gem and fresh tomatoes and fresh bits, and basically you've got a chicken nugget salad.
That's very good. I like that one.
I wish I could claim that one. That came from our food team and is actually part of like the Sidekick food planning app. And it's a brilliant recipe that I cooked a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so good.
That is so good. And I think that's something interesting about using other ingredients to protect from that intense heat of the air fryer.
Something you want to go nice and crispy and dry out, the breadcrumbs, rather than the chicken that you don't want to dry out. So you kind of get the best of both worlds.
Very nice. And a really boring, that is just a potato.
It's not boring. Spuds are great, and they are all the things we spoke about, cheap and cheerful and the alike. What could you do? I think, so wash it, grate it, squeeze it through clean kitchen roll or kitchen towels to get rid of the excess moisture, and then add some oil, salt, pepper, maybe an egg yolk, although that would enrich it, not necessary, and make little like roasties. So in a pan, you would put them flat, but actually in an air fryer, you can just keep them as little blobs of this like potato and all the little straggly bits, the bits that will go crispy, and you'll have almost like little crispy, roasty blobs.
Oh, 3 out of 3. I loved seeing it. It's
like the cogs turn.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a master improviser. That makes an air fryer sound very appealing and just a real like experimental zone where you can really just try things out.
And you are, I think, trying in a relatively small space. So you can just try 1 potato and give it a go. And if it works, you can do 4 potatoes for the whole family tomorrow. But you're not kind of restricted by what if this all goes wrong tonight.
Fantastic. Now, at which we are like the testing people, we like to get into the hood of all these things. As a chef, do you have any questions for our team that we can answer when we speak to them about air fryers? Is there anything that you kind of wonder about them?
I think energy efficiency, and we've tried some very rudimentary tests in the past, but we're not qualified ever to do science. As we said, we're chefs who occasionally get let off the leash and a bunch of normal home cooks. So we always try to have the open conversation about what ifs and try and play devil's advocate all the time. But actually, how much more efficient are they on energy usage compared to heating up the main oven or running, say, a slow cooker for many, many hours versus a small hot box? Because it is intense heat, but only for a short time. So I don't know which wins.
We will put this to Steph later in the show.
Real.
Ben, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find you and Sorted out there on the interwebs?
Sorted Food, you'll find us on YouTube, but also across all social platforms is always at Sorted Food. And you can find Sidekick on the App Store.
Thank you so much, Ben.
Thank you.
In a moment, we'll have Steph answering Ben's burning question on energy use. But before that, a quick break.
Like listening to podcasts just like this one from the team at Which? Well, we've got some good news. All our podcasts are now available to listen to on YouTube and YouTube Music. So whether you like listening to Get Answers, Which Shorts or Which Money, all episodes can now be listened to directly on YouTube or through the YouTube Music app. To find them, just search for the podcast you'd like to listen to. YouTube's additional functionality also means that you can now read along with subtitles as you listen. Don't panic though, all Which podcasts are still available to listen to elsewhere too. So wherever you listen, we'll see you soon.
Welcome back. You're listening to Get Answers. Now, before we get that answer from Steph, it's your regular reminder to get your own questions into us to answer in the next episode. Next episode, we'll be looking at AI and how it relates to customer service. Are you fed up of chatbots that don't seem to answer your questions about why your water has shut off? Well, we're going to be putting your questions to the experts and finding out what AI can do for us, or whether it's actually just holding us back. Email us your questions at podcast@which.co.uk.
And if you're enjoying this podcast, please do share it with a family member or a friend. Well, a great interview, Harry, and a really interesting question there, actually. Steph, what do you think about the costs involved?
So if you're comparing per meal or per food item, then air fryers actually can be a lot cheaper than cooking in a traditional oven or even a slow cooker. So in a recent test that we did, we cooked the same food, same portion sizes in a lot of different cooking appliances. So we used an oven, an air fryer, a slow cooker and so on. And we cooked a few different meals. But as an example, we cooked a roast chicken in all of these different appliances. And the roast chicken cost about 28p to cook in the oven. Compare that to the slow cooker was about 22p. And compared to an air fryer, that was 13p. So it's quite a lot cheaper than your traditional oven or even other smaller appliances. Some other examples, so cooking chips in the oven was about 21p for 2 portions compared to 7p in the air fryer. So you can see you can make some quite significant cost savings by cooking in an air fryer, but it's really important to factor in the original purchase price of the product. You know, if you don't already have one, you need to be making this investment in order to get the benefit. As an example, in that same test, we also cooked a jacket potato in the oven and in the air fryer, and it cost about 27p in the oven compared to 10p in an air fryer. Now that's a difference of 17p. That sounds like quite a lot. But if you're spending £200 on an air fryer, for example, for a really fancy, all the bells and whistles model, you're going to be looking at about 22 years.
Wow.
For it to pay itself off. That's based on cooking one jacket potato a week, moved from the oven to the air fryer.
I mean, how much is an average air fryer going to cost you?
So we've tested models costing anywhere from about £30 up to about £250.
Okay, quite a big difference
Quite
then.
a big difference. You do get what you pay for though. So the cheaper models tend to be the single basket type. They do tend to be smaller capacities and a lot simpler as well. So there might just be a few automatic programs and maybe a manual control. Whereas if you spend more, you'll get more programs. You might get a bigger one, digital controls, and you might get some extra functions as well. So we see products called multi-cookers. So they will have a pressure cooker function, they'll have a slow cooker function, and an air fryer function. So even though you may buy it for the air fryer function, you're getting all these other programs that you can use as well. You know, if you're spending £250 on an air fryer, that's quite a big investment. So you need to be sure that it's the right product for you. Make sure you're getting a good one. We found to get a good product, you generally need to be spending about £70 on an air fryer.
Do you know, that's not actually that much. So you can get a good air fryer for around 70 quid.
Yeah.
Now, we've actually been testing air fryers at Which for a long time, right? I think 2009, so long before they were fashionable. Can you tell us about the kind of things we actually test?
Yeah, so as you said, we did our first test in 2009. That was one of the very first sort of mainstream air fryer models to be launched. And we actually tested it alongside a batch of deep fat fryers because that was the sort of closest equivalent product at the time.
Do you know, I remember this because I think my mother-in-law bought an air fryer as a kind of alternative to a deep fat fryer for cooking chips. And it was kind of seen originally as this sort of healthy thing rather than saving money or anything like that.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see the change in the product category and the marketing and what people use them for. Fundamentally, the products haven't really changed that much since 2009. Back then, you did get more of the sort of bowl style air fryers. Now we see more basket type ones. But it's been that shift of when they were first brought out, as you said, they were marketed as the healthy way of cooking chips. We've seen that shift over the last few years in terms of the energy cost crisis. People have realised that they do save you money compared to cooking in an oven. And it's been a really interesting shift of the marketing of how people use them. But it's fundamentally the same product.
I think it's really interesting to see that marketing. Even when you look at the comments on our air fryer videos, there'll be some people who say, oh, I don't care about how much money it saves. What matters to me is that it's healthier. And there'll be some people who say, oh, I don't care about how healthy it is. It's about how easy it is to clean it in the dishwasher. And the other people say, you're both wrong. It's all about, the fat content. And I think that's what's kind of so interesting about air fryers is that people actually like them for different reasons. And maybe we don't even know what's so great about them and why they've really taken off. But the proof of the pudding is in the ridiculously high sales figures to the point where almost half of homes now, I think, have got an air fryer.
They're a really versatile product and lots of people use them for different reasons. It's one of those great sort of all-round multifunction products. We've all got that gadget or that fad that we bought into because something became trendy. And then those products, you use them a few times, they're a bit of a one-trick pony, and they end up languishing in the back of your cupboard, never to be seen again. I think one of the things that air fryers does so well is they are generally really good. The good ones are really good. And even the basic ones will do their core job well.
Can we talk about the testing? So we obviously test air fryers in a lab. What parts of an air fryer are being tested? How do we find a good air fryer or a bad air fryer?
So the main focus of our testing is the cooking. That's obviously the primary function of the product. So we cook chips, we cook chicken, and a new addition to our test program is we're actually baking bread baguettes. More and more people nowadays are using their air fryers to cook bread-based products, so garlic bread, pizzas, things like that. We focus on how well they cook. So we're looking at the sort of evenness of the cooking. Are the ends of the chips all burnt and dried out, and the middle's actually not cooked? Are the ones at the top being cooked differently to the ones at the bottom? We look at how long they take to heat up, how long they take to cook. We also look at how usable the products are, so how easy to use, how easy are the programs to understand and to set. We look at how easy they are to clean inside, if there's any sort of grease traps, places where batter crumbs or oil is going to get caught. And we also look at how easy they are to manoeuvre and store, so if they've got cable storage. And if you are going to be taking it in and out of a cupboard, we look at how manoeuvrable they are, how heavy they are, how well balanced, and things like that.
So, Steph, if you are going to go out and buy an air fryer and you haven't got a Which subscription, which gives you access to all of the things that you actually test for, what would you say are the main things you should be looking for to buy the best air fryer?
So you really need to think about what you're going to be cooking and how much you're going to be cooking. So you need to think about the size that's going to work for you. If you want a single basket or a dual basket model as well. You also want it to be easy to use. So look for clear instructions, clear labels, dials that you can use or buttons that you can use really easily. You also want it to be well built. So, look for a really good quality, good looking model that's going to look great in your kitchen as well. And of course, the thing that people can't really test for themselves at home is the energy consumption. As I said, think about what size. If you're only cooking for 1 or 2 people, a smaller model will be more energy efficient and cost you less than a bigger model that you're not going to use the space efficiently.
Well, look, thank you so much, Steph. And also to Ben, of course, who we spoke to earlier.
And if you want to find out our best buys and don't buys, you can subscribe to Which. Just follow the link in the show notes.
Remember to get your AI questions into us for next time. Email us at podcasts@which.co.uk or say hello on social media. We're at Which UK on all the main channels.
And we'd love it if you could leave us a rating and a review. It's a really effective way to show your support for our podcasts, and it helps us get recommended to new listeners. Today's Get Answers was presented by me, Harry Kind, alongside Grace Farrell, produced by Rob Lilly-Jones and Adrian Bradley, recorded by James Rowe, and edited by Eric Breer. And thanks again to our wonderful guests Steph Kipling and Ben Ebbrell. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Want to stay ahead of fraudsters and across the latest scams? At Which, we helped prevent an estimated £1.8 million in scam losses last year thanks to our Scam Alert newsletter. And each week we provide more information on the latest scam activity, helping protect you, your family and your friends. Stay in the know and avoid falling victim to scammers by joining over 450,000 people already signed up to our free Which Scam Alerts. To join them, head to which.co.uk/scamalert and sign up today.